Now that we have learned the concepts and elements in design, in this lesson, we're going to start sketching. There are many ways designers do their work in sketches. Mine is quite simple, but it's also very rough. Personally, what I need is just a couple of lines and notes for me to understand and know what to do on the computer. I have done already some for you, and I'll walk you through them. The first thing I do is having the message. In this case, it's going to be this course. Domestika presents Attention to the Letters, or The Art of Working with Typography, a class by designer Abraham Lule. Once it's that, I'll go to paper. The first thing that I did is start having like this rough box that is my format. The format that I've selected is 1920 by 1080 square pixels, which is the most useful resource in dimensions on screen. I decided to do this format because I wanted this to be a bit better looking when it goes into your screen. The next thing I did is having a space for my Domestika Presents and the title. You'll see right now the title is very horizontal, so I started doing these boxes for the attention, really condensed and narrow, which goes back to shape and format. You'll see that I have changed already the combination of the elements. The next thing is that I knew that maybe this composition won't live just on your screen, but also on your social media, which a square format drawn here is a bit more flexible and friendly with those applications. That led me to have a better composition that is in here in the center, and because attention was on a really wide format on our previous sketch, I decided to have it on this half moon shape or eyebrow shape, and then connecting it to a straight line here for letters. Then what we have here is that are nested letters inside attention and letters, because we have kind of these two pieces doing like a sandwich on this part. Then the secondary title, that is, or the art of working with typography, is just grounding the whole principal title. Once we have that box, the next thing I do is having some sort of guidance on the edges. We don't want to be so close to the edge of the format, so I have this alineation here and here that are marking our bleed in this case. The next thing I do is having some sort of numbers for each of the elements in the composition. 1 is for Domestika, 2, attention to the letters, that is the title, 3, or the art of working with typography, which is the secondary title, and then the 4 and 5 extra elements, a class with designer Abraham Lule here. This is a good step for you to remember about rhythm. In this case, I wanted the rhythm not to have like an upbeat pace. I wanted to have the attention in this part, in the main title, and these pieces are really adding more texture to our composition. So in my case, this goes more inspired into sign painting. That's why I wanted to have a more classic look. Now, in this format, you'll see that I have removed all what we had on text. This is a good point for us to start talking about spacing and composition in a clearer space. You see that in here, I'm also having like a condensed font because I know that this is a bit more elongated. The boxes I have done here are a bit more narrow. So the other thing is that I'm counting the boxes that attention is gonna be framed in A, T, T, and such on. The nested letters here were simpler, but because I have these two boxes here, this should be smaller, and that's why I made the decision. Letters here, because it's starting to look a bit more square, I think it's gonna be a regular font, and I started doing something like this, just having your letters based in boxes. You start seeing here that I'm also working with spacing in these characters, something that I've noticed that this box is quite narrow in comparison of these ones, and that's why I have this note here for me to have fixing this part. For the bottom part, I'm starting including some sort of illustrative elements. I think because everything is so typographic, an extra element in here will add more texture to the bottom and also will make it feel more special. Adding notes on your sketches is a good way to track your process. Sometimes adding the note will be the key of what to do next or what is not really working, and go back and revisit that rough sketch before this one. That's why I have these notes in here about spacing, some annotations about increasing contrast, because maybe in here what we need is a contrasting font or this part in here, condense font. This will also inform what we do next. The other important part in here, and I'm borrowing this principle from sign painting, is when you have your space for your title, it's important that you count the letters of each of the words. In this case, I have A, T, T, E, N, T, Y, O, N. Attention, you'll see that in here, I'm actually missing some of the portions of the word. That's why I have a condensed font as a note, because it's something that I will fix in the next sketch. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters. Once you are structuring this part, you'll draw a box for each letters. I have done this here in attention, and I'll do the same for letters. One thing you'll notice is I have changed the Domestika Presents. In the previous sketch, this was marked as a stacked format, like a Domestika followed by Presents. But now that I have a more curved here, a cleaner version of the title, it felt right to have TOTHE and Domestika Presents connected. So we have a straight line followed by the half moon, the nested letters, and then letters, then the secondary title, and the illustrative element. In this way, I think we have good rhythm and a bit more of a harmonious composition overall. What we'll do next is having a more object typography based sketch on the next one. In here, I'm correcting everything that I had noted in the previous sketch. In my previous sketch, I had a note about spacing here. The letter I, because of the shape, in combination with a circular form and then a regular form, this was really gonna be an issue when jumping on screen. So in here, you'll see that I have fixed it already. I have noticed that maybe it's closer to the O than the T, and similarly, the way that these two T's are working together and the space between them, maybe it's good to have them as a ligature. It's something that I have in my head to do. It doesn't need to be mandatory to do, but I think that is a good way to tie everything together, especially if we're using two different body types, this condensed and this regular. Maybe because these are two T's as well, is something that we can link, so you'll see the whole title working very nicely. The next thing is from top to bottom. Domestika Presents, now that it's on a straight line, more regular, or maybe it's extended typeface, you'll see that the rhythm in here and here and here is quite consistent, and really the only one that is breaking it is the part of attention. Attention, I think, is important because the meaning of the word itself is quite imperative. So having it in a more classic, friendlier shape, I think is going to lower the volume and the rhythm of the whole composition. So far, I'm seeing everything in black and white. Remember, color is going to be our weight in typography. And this is the why I'm having the notes here. I don't really have ideas for how color as pigment or RGB or CMYK is going to be on the sketch. But if you have references or inspiration of your letters, you can have those next to you. So then when you're on the computer, you have more information on what to do next. For the weight that I have decided for each of the elements, you'll see that not all of them are together, because right now I'm seeing the composition just in black and white. I wanted to have some more flexibility with the text, kind of like spicing it up a little bit more with the mix and match of typography. This is also a principle that I'm borrowing from sign painting. Because of the shape of this part and it's condensed, I think something medium, maybe a medium regular, will bring them together. The attention to the letters in our hierarchy should be the most prominent piece, not only in scale, but also in weight. So these two will go together. Maybe this part in here is just a secondary version of what we have here. Followed by the secondary title here, I see this one just as a script, just to have more contrast in between everything else. So far we have regular, condensed, regular, regular. The only part that will be script is going to be this one, which will be the accents, a bit more playful touch in the composition. You can also see that from my previous sketch in here, I'm actually out of the composition, I'm out of the format. At the moment, because it is just a rough sketch, it doesn't really matter. What matters the most is that you have a clean composition for you to go next to the computer and have some more information on what to do next. If you are new to sketching or you are not familiar with illustration or working with pencil and paper, A good way to do it is just drawing a box and then mark the center of your format horizontally and vertically, as you see in here. This will allow you to have more flexibility and a different approach to your paper. Because all my compositions are quite concentric, I'll go from center to the sides, and this will also balance a little bit more evenly what I have on the design elements. This is something that you can apply to your own projects too. Once we're happy of how things look on paper and we have our notes and indications, I think we're ready to move this to the computer. In the next lesson, we'll move from paper to screen.